Why libertarians are wrong about taxation.
Yep, that's right, we're back to debunking Anton Deibel. This guy seems to be just so damn eager to defend mass extortion by the state, isn't he? Yep, let's get right into this.
You'll often hear them say taxation is theft.
Theft, honestly, is putting it a bit too mildly. Taxation is more like extortion because it's being committed through a threat of violence. Calling it theft somewhat implies that they're trying to be discreet about it, like they're trying to slip a 20 out of your pocket while you're not looking.
It's done without our consent.
Well, if taxation was being done with our consent, then presumably we'd be able to withdraw that consent. If taxation really was based upon my consent, then presumably I'd be able to call up the IRS and let them know I'd like to unsubscribe or opt out. Somehow I have a feeling that that's not the case.
And they'll liken it to a robber in a dark alleyway sticking you up at gunpoint and taking your wallet.
It might not be the exact same process, but at its essence, the same thing is basically happening. Someone is threatening you with violence in order to get money from you. The IRS just so happens to be doing it more formally than the back alley mugger.
Comparisons like this are ridiculous.
The only thing that's ridiculous is this whole idea that something that would ordinarily be wrong if the rest of us did it magically becomes justified when you put some marble buildings, fancy looking paper, badges, and uniforms behind it.
Because how many armed robberies have you heard of where the guy takes your money and then comes to your house the next day and spends that money painting your house, repairing your cracked driveway, providing you with health care, and just generally using it to improve your life?
How many painting companies have you heard of where they threaten to kidnap you into a cage unless you use their service? That's why this analogy doesn't work. Because a paint company or any sort of private contractor like that would repair your driveway, they don't get to forcibly take your money and force you to use their service. You have to contract with them first before they have any right to take your money. This isn't the case with government.
People also get to vote on what our tax dollars get spent on.
So if a thief breaks in your house and steals $1,000, but then gives you a choice on which charity he's going to donate it to, does that suddenly mean you weren't stolen from? The fact that the thief might give me a choice in how the money is spent doesn't mean that it's not theft if the transaction was coerced in the first place.
There's no voting booth where we collectively decide how aggressively we're going to get mugged in the alleyway.
Why should things be decided collectively at all? The needs and wants of each individual are unique. Wouldn't it just be easier to have a market system where people can choose where they want to spend their money?
And if people are voting for politicians who endorse this system of taxation,
this kind of has to do with that point I made a moment ago, but instead of voting for politicians to forcibly take people's money to spend it on things that the people want, wouldn't it be a lot easier for people to just give their money to the things that they want? Like, if you want the poor to be taken care of, donate to a charity. If you want the environment to be taken care of, donate to a nonprofit. If you want workers to be protected, donate to a union. I mean, people can just directly give their money where they think it should go. Having politicians and tax collectors there to act as middlemen just seems wasteful.
what are we doing here if not stealing from ourselves?
No, you're stealing from everyone who doesn't want to pay. If two wolves and a lamb vote on what to eat for dinner, and the lamb gets outvoted, does that mean the lamb gave his consent to be eaten? Obviously not.
The final point to make is that people benefit from what our tax dollars get spent on.
So why exactly do we need to force people to pay for it then? I mean, if these things provide a benefit that's worthwhile, wouldn't people voluntarily opt in to pay for them? Why do we have to force people to pay for them then?
Whether they like it or not.
If people are being forced to participate in the system whether they like it or not, then obviously it's not based on consent. You just kind of defeated your own argument there, buddy. Here's the thing. Anton could, in theory, make the argument that taxation is justified in spite of being theft. That would at least be more consistent with the arguments that he's making, but that's not the case he's trying to make. He's trying to argue that taxation is not theft and it's based on consent. And arguing that the system be imposed on people whether they like it or not just utterly defeats that whole argument.
So it's only fair that they chip in and pay their fair share.
What's considered a fair share, though? What's considered sufficiently chipping in? And for that matter, what's considered a benefit? Who's to say that I'm not being forced to pay for things that are actually detrimental to me, such as the war on drugs? You see, value is subjective. And like I mentioned earlier in the video, needs and wants can vary greatly from individual to individual. This is the whole reason that markets are superior to government central planning, because a market enables people to make decisions based on their own circumstances. It's a lot more efficient than doing everything collectively through a government.
I thought libertarians were against freeloaders.
I love how he chooses to end the video on this line with a smug look on his face, like he thinks this is some kind of big gotcha point. First of all, buddy, you can let people freeload off of you all you want. The problem is you want to reach into my wallet and have people freeload off of me. But second of all, and more importantly, taxation actually enables a lot more freeloading than it prevents. A big reason for that is that it forces people to pay for services whether or not they use them. For example, let's say that you don't have kids or you send your kids to a private school. You're still stuck paying for the public public school. Or let's say that you have a healthcare plan through your employer and you don't really need Medicare or Medicaid. Well, guess what? You're still stuck paying for it. Forcing people who don't use something to pay for it in order to make it artificially cheaper for everyone else sounds way more like freeloading than someone driving over a bridge they didn't pay for. As always, this has been Philosopos of Making Stupidity Play Dead. Until next time, take care.